Alrighty, thank you everyone. Thanks for coming. Got Steve and Jo Starling here tonight. Very grateful they could make it. Should be a good sort of pre-season primer. Like, we're sick of the cold winter. We're ready for some warm weather. So let's bring it on, eh? So thanks, Steve and Jo.
All right, I think we're going to kick off with Jo, so I'll grab a seat and over to you.
Hello. I get some people to say that that it's harder being the superstar, right? And I get the easy job, but my job today is as the primer. So my job is to get you guys all whipped up. So I hope that you're going to join in and support me a little on this. I haven't done a whole heap of practice, so I'm just going to speak to these slides if that's all right. Steve dobbed me in for telling you all about my fly fishing journey. Can I just, before I start, ask how many of us here are fly fishers? A lot of you. So you all came to see me. That's fucking exciting. All righty. Well, this is something that I feel a lot. I may be a witch because every time I cast my long wand, all my troubles disappear. Does anyone else relate to that concept? Is fly fishing your mental health thing? It certainly is for me. So I'm going to talk around me being a witch, just to prove it right. And I'm also going to spin a few other yarns. My fly fishing journey is now 14 years old, which means I'm a baby. Who would agree? A wee baby when it comes to fly fishing. So let's get into that. Before I tell you specifically how fly fishing makes all my troubles disappear, I thought I might try and bring you a little bit into my psyche. So I'm going to read you a poem that I wrote. I do this a lot when I start fly fishing talks, but to me this is the epitome of me on the water. So please bear with me. Bubbles parade past bowing tussocks, the air filled with the giggle of the stream. A glossy bronze snout sneaks past the barrier, sipping a morsel, not quite unseen. I am here. Breathe. I am ready. Breathe. Firm, deliberate, focused, I perform my rhythmic dance. Its spell mist cloaks the playful land as I sink into my trance. All I see is here. The moment seems to slow. My morsel lands and joins the parade, blending with the flow. I am here. Breathe. I am ready. Breathe. Bubbles pass, parade past, bowing tussocks the mist filled in the chatter of the stream. A glossy bronze snout sneaks past the barrier, sipping a morsel seen. One sudden rip, the barrier shatters and clears my cloaking mist. Full colour, full of life, the fish comes to hand after a twisting and surging tryst. Who relates? Do you feel it? I get goosebumps. So let's go from spell to story. My fly fishing story starts with a very small, strange little fish. Who's heard of a gobbleguts? Has anyone heard of a gobbleguts? Neither had I, until I pulled it out of the water as my first fish on fly in Darwin, some 14 years back, and immediately said to Steve, "What's that?" It was literally no bigger, no longer than my index finger. But for me, what that filled me with, it may as well have been a meterbarra. It was extraordinary. I'd been through quite a lot to get to that point. On this particular day, we were on Darwin Harbour, fishing at what is now the wave pool area. And it was a come and try fly open day. And all of us beginners were moving around different stations and casting into Darwin Harbour and having a crack. And we got sort of 10 minutes at each station and then moved along. So yeah, my first fly fishing was saltwater, obviously, and I was the only person that day to catch a fish. So that is my my gobble guts. The joy so often in fly fishing outweighs the size of the fish. Not much has changed. This is my reaction to catching my first fish on Euronymph, which was a few years ago now, and it wasn't much bigger than that first gobble guts. But I tell you what, that could have been a metre too, because Euronymphing, after doing 10 years or so of conventional fly, was a very frustrating game as well, and took quite a bit of work. So yeah, small fish can be very memorable on fly, and in fact I think it's one of the most notable aspects of fly fishing, or learning to fly, and that is that everything seems amplified. So I owe my addiction to Steve. Thank you, darling. He's a pusher. Soon after meeting me, he intuited quite rightly that, that I might like fly fishing. I was fishing long before I met Steve. It's what brought us together, and I often say we are the owners of the greatest love story in Australian recreational fishing, but that is one of my talks for another day and probably a different audience. But he was right, in fact, and I was so grateful that I decided not to throw him back, as you can see. A year or so later, reeled in the big one. That's us on the Cook Islands, after we'd exchanged vows. So my first turn, what happened is that Steve thought, Jo will like fly fishing, so I'll take her to a learn to fly day with Dottie, I'm trying to think of her surname, anyway, Dottie up north. And it was through the Darwin Fly Rodders Club, which was a fabulous club in its day. And we were fly fishing or swaffing at Lake Alexander. And Steve said, well, come on, we'll give you a crack. So this is me learning to fly fish. Let's say it was not intuitive at all. I did not take to it like a duck to water. In fact, I was pretty convinced that I was not a natural. Steve captured me when he came over and said, how you going? That was my response to him. Sometime later, he found me sitting in the shade of a tree on a picnic table. He thought I was dejected and just watching everybody else. But what actually happened was that I'd realised after I'd sort of done enough of this to paint the Sydney Bridge, I realised, no, I'm not getting something. You can see how many people were there, and there were many of them that were achieving something that looked similar to a fly cast. And then there are those of us that were doing the, oh, get out there thing, you know. And so I decided, my martial artist from days gone by sat down and said, Jo, this isn't magic, this is mechanics. All right, this is about timing, this is about precision, it's not about muscle. So I sat down, and that's where Steve found me, and what I was doing was actually taking a good look at the form of the people who were getting their fly out and the form of those who were like me, and it looked like we were doing something completely different. And that's when I started to get it. It was just sitting there and assessing the difference between those beginners that were getting it. It's different to watch someone who knows how to fly fish, right? They make it look so easy, and it is not intuitive. So Zen-like flow is not an early hook with fly fishing, quite obviously. Here's a photo of my action and my face going, what the hell? How does this even work? So I'd been conventional tackle fishing for more than a decade by the time Steve came along, so trying to put all that power into it and get it out there. Yeah, I basically sucked a fair bit. So casting in confidence over the next 5 years, the confidence built up. I was able to get my fly out there and I was landing fish. By this stage, I don't know, we fished quite a bit. I think I would have had 20 or 30 species under my belt within the first 5 years because we travelled so much. I mean, you can imagine what it's like being suddenly thrust into Steve Starling's life. It was, my fishing time went through the roof. So I managed to work out casting and I was pretty chuffed with that. Who's got an idea about what the first thing I would have caught from a boat was? Any guesses? Put your hand up, Steve. The first thing I actually hooked from a boat was Steve's cheek, and I gave him an equal dimple because he's got one on each side now. So what happened in all of that was I was with Steve in the first got together with Steve in the heyday of the fishing DVD. Does anyone remember the fishing DVD? And so I found myself suddenly thrust in front of a camera for the first time in my life, and I was often put rods in my hand that I'd never touched before and gone after species that I'd never fished for before, and always managed, as the RC person that I am, to pull it off and look like I knew what I was doing. It was great fun. And then suddenly, as I got able to get a line out in the water and occasionally catch a fish, suddenly fly rods were being put in my hand with a camera in front of me. Oh, that changed things quite a bit because I suddenly started to get imposter syndrome really badly, and I started to get night sweats and freaking out, especially when I started seeing the episodes and how much work they'd done that made me look so very good at what I did. And the problem for me was that I'd be given the gear, right? So I'd turn up, what am I doing today? Well, here's your rod. And it's got the line on it and the reel and the weights chosen for me, and here's your flies, and we're going chasing this particular species. And so my issue was, what if when we're at a pub, because he's a conversation magnet, people just come over and want to talk to him. And so then if he's busy, they might ask me something about fly fishing because it looks like I know what I'm doing. And then I'm going to be exposed as a massive fraud. Well, I didn't like that idea, so that's where my fly gear gap year came in. Did anyone hear about my fly gear gap year? Yeah, it was intense. It was brave, but it was necessary, I think. So what my fly gear gap year was I committed to fly only for a year. So all the conventional tackle got put away, except with a caveat of if there was a tournament and fly was not appropriate, then, because in those days I didn't fish fly comps, then I'd bring the conventional gear out again. I had some fabulous sponsors, as you can see there, with Manic Tackle Project, Sims, Airflow, Mako Eyewear, and they came along with me for the journey. And it was during that time that I met these two lovely people right here, Glenn and Jane. It was in January of my fly gear gap year over in Tassie. We just started. And I met Glenn and Jane at, it wasn't London Lakes, it was Highland Waters. That's right, and the guys were just getting the Australian ladies fly fishing team started. And I distinctly remember Glenn suggesting that maybe I might like to join that program. Of course, I ran backwards 1,000,000 miles an hour. I was still trying to work out what line do you use. I mean, at this point in time, I thought I knew about floating line. That was it. That's all I knew. So, but it's funny how life keeps bringing things along. The other thing that happened was the day after I met Glenn and Jane, I was walking a dam wall and rolled my ankle slightly in a fly boot, which meant that my ankle didn't move, and I busted my ACL right at the beginning of my fly gear gap year. So then I needed a knee reconstruction, and that sort of thwarted everything. But even with a knee reconstruction and all of these things going against me, that fly gear gap year taught me more than I can even begin to pack into a book. It was just extraordinary. Things that happened in that year, we had the Forster Fly Muster, and I went up for that as part of my learning. It was going to be something fairly gentle that I could do. And one of the frustrating things that happened to me up there as a learner, because I was recording everything so that I could share the frustrations of learning to fly, because I thought it was best to be honest with others so that they didn't feel that it was just them. Well, I took a 6-weight and a 9-weight with me and then managed to put my 6-weight reel on my 9-weight rod, because they look the same, and ended up in tears under a coconut tree thinking I can't cast. I went there specifically to learn the Belgian cast because I was going up to Darwin. What had happened is the year before, my all-girls team in conventional tackle won the Secret Women's Business Barra Challenge, and so we were going to the Barra Nationals as a team. We were going to Dippery Lodge and we were going heli fishing. So Dippery Lodge and heli fishing, fly only for me, was pretty cool. But that meant that I was going to be casting great big pink things and all the barra lures, and I was pretty scared of clipping myself, seeing as I'd watched the pain that Steve had been in when I clipped him with a great big fly. And so my research told me I had to learn this Belgian cast or an oval cast. Do people know this one? Yeah, it's one of the greatest, seriously, best casts that I can encourage you to learn, and if you'll give me a minute I'll explain it to you, because there weren't very many people who said they understood it. Basically, you cast forward in a normal forward stroke, but when you do your back cast it's sideways. So you're creating an oval in the air, but you come back to the side so that the fly is always out away from you, and then at the end you bring it up and your pause is high, and then your forward stroke is like a tennis serve. All right, and so what that does is keep the big flies away from you, so they use this a lot for your barra and your cod and all of those sorts of things. But the other thing it's really good for is in wind, because you can come back under the wind when the wind is behind you and then use the wind forward. So this was a cast that I'd been told at the beginning that I should learn for the trip to Darwin, and it was an excellent tip. So that's what I was practicing when I had a 9-weight rod and a 6-weight fly line, and I could only get the fly out about 20 or 30 feet, which is not what I wanted for the saltwater fishing for flatties, when in actual fact now I think that whole frustrating exercise, once I realised what was going on, it had trained me a lot. I can now get, with an oval cast or a Belgian cast, I can actually fling a properly weighted line out. If you can do it, get any cast out with a seriously underweighted line, then you've got to get a properly weighted line out. Now the other thing that was really interesting that I learnt was going to Dippery Lodge and heli fishing. So barra fishing for on fly. That one's heli fishing, so there's a little bit of angst because we are in crocodile infested areas, dropped in by the heli pilot, and that's one of the barra that I got. In Dippery, what I learnt was this, and it's something that I'll take with me, and it's a takeaway that I'm deliberately giving you guys. If you're a fly fisher and your friends are conventional tackle fishers, it's not a lot of fun to try and do that on a boat together. There are several reasons. Certainly if you're in water like we were in, where we've got absolutely rushing currents, the fly boat needs to be set up differently and in different locations to some with conventional tackle. They don't need to worry about the currents so much. And I had a pretty young girl on my team with me and a male skipper who thought she was pretty hot. So he didn't give a damn that the old duck needed the boat put somewhere else. He wanted to put it wherever she wanted to be. So that was an exercise in frustration for me. And the other part of it, have quite often with Women's Rec Fishing League, girls that have just been bitten by the fly fishing bug, and they're mentors for our X Factor tournaments, and they think, well, can I fish with fly? And my answer is no, I wouldn't do that. You're going to have fly line out when they get snagged up with their conventional tackle and all that. It's much quicker and easier to go from one cast to the next in conventional tackle than fly gear. And so just the timing difference makes sharing a boat really difficult. There you go, there's one of them coming in. That's cool. And so the other thing that happened in my fly gear gap year was the off-road adventure show that Steve was a star on. And on one of my trips, we were filming in Queensland, no, the rivers, the northern rivers. And I said to Steve, got up in the morning, right, what am I doing today? And he said, you're on bass. And I said, but I've never fished for bass before. So that's it, that's your segment, Joe, off you go. And you can see how thrilled I was to, by this stage, have learnt enough about fly fishing to be able to be given a new task to go and achieve and to land, get the job done, basically. So my 3 big takeaways for you guys from that section of my fly fishing life is, consider the Belgian cast. Go and practice that for flexibility, versatility, and all of those things, especially if you're going or have a dream of doing any of the fabulous saltwater things like Christmas Island and all of those places where the wind might come up, or you've got to cast a long way, or you're casting big flies. Take that one with you in your arsenal. Remember that as much as I love it, I learnt, and Steve told me that I'd learned this going into my fly gear gap year, that fly fishing is not always the best answer with regards to circumstance. Steve was right. He said that I would be frustrated if I only limited myself to fly, because there are times when it can actually mean you don't get to fish. That's absolutely true. And the other point is boats and bickering. Recognise that sometimes sharing the boat with someone who isn't fishing fly as well can cause problems. And then we came full circle back to Glenn and Jane, because as funny as it is, after COVID, someone completely separate in Craig Dawson invited Steve to come to a fishing comp. And so Steve brought me along once again, intuiting that Joe might like this. And of course, I think you fished the one, didn't you, Steve? And then I was addicted and fished, I don't know, however many left. And I've got a number of friends here from those comp days that is just part of the community, the wonderful community that fly fishing is. So this is a photo from a recent comp where the river was so swollen, I actually didn't catch a single fish on this particular comp, but that was on the Tumut. But I learnt a hell of a lot. So comps is when the learning gets real. I thought my fly gear gap year was a massive learning curve, which it was, but since starting the comps 2.5, coming up to 3 years ago, the learning curve has been just exponential. And I think the thing is that your biggest competition is always with yourself. It's so challenging, you know, and there are people that you're competing against, but there's so much going on in your head, and any sport is as much about mindset as anything else. It was a tweak on that usual Zen, because the Zen-like mindset is still there, but it comes right down into, it's amped right up in mindfulness and focus. And your focus becomes about timing, breaking down your beats into your objective and how long you can spend, and you can't afford to lose track of time. And self-belief, really just believing that you're going to be able to get it done. So what I learned is you need humility, because it will beat you more often than not, and you need to trust your own rhythm. So the next section is big moments and small flights. What have been the highs, lows and pivots, because I'm just I'm still in the comp phase of this. Well, here's one. I was fishing for bream on Churros Lake, and it wasn't Churros, it was on Coiler. Deepest part of Coiler is 3 metres, and we were fishing up in about 1.5 to 2 metres of water, and this particular bream with a slight pink and blue hue took my fly, and it ran like you wouldn't believe. It had nowhere to go except across, which it did at quite a rate of knots, and Steve jumped straight on the electric motor and started chasing it. We had no idea. We thought this was a bream on steroids. We couldn't wait to get it out. We thought it was bound to be a record. And it came up, it was a 54 centimetre snapper. It was just amazing. So you can see how chuffed I was. Steve, I'll never forget Steve's face when he started seeing those little iridescent blue spots coming up. It was, hang on a minute. Another very cool memory that is fun was chasing long-tailed tuna in the Northern Territory. This is something that Steve and I only got to do a couple of times, but there was one particular time up in Maningrida where the sharks, they key in on the hull of the boat, and so we were chasing long-tailed tuna, the sharks were chasing us, and every time we hooked a tuna, of course, it becomes slower than the rest of the school, and so the sharks would eat the tuna and you'd end up with a little bit. So we worked out, and it was so much fun, that if we had one person on the motor, one person taking the shot, we'd set it up, get the cast out, strip, hook the fish, and then gas after it and run it through the school so that then the sharks come through and hit all the free swimming tuna and gave us a chance to land ours. So there's a strategy for you as another takeaway. So following my rod, I see my rod as an adventure diviner. That's another thing that, so see, it is magical. I've followed my rod to New Zealand with Steve, the Cook Islands. So it was my first and probably only flounder on fly, which was a cracker in Aitutaki. I was actually chasing bonefish, but you know, I didn't get one of those, I got a flounder. And Chile, recently, I took myself over to Chile with my mother and my daughter, as well as a number of other places around the world. But if there was ever a reason to go fly fishing, just let that rod take you where it wants you to go. And then there's the elephant in the room. I can't turn up and not talk about the disappointment of the recent Ladies World Fly Fishing Championship in America. This was one of my not disappointing moments. A fabulous fish that I caught on Henry's Fork, Euro nymphing. So what this fish proved to me, and I learnt from being over there, is an abundance mindset. Over in the States, there are just fish everywhere. And so whereas over here, I'd fallen into the trap of believing that when I wasn't catching fish on a beat, it was because I was shit, basically. And what it taught me over in the States is it's because there were no fish there. I'm not that bad, and I caught heaps of fish in the States because there were lots of fish. So what I learnt through that in getting ready for the States, Tom Jarman and the girls in our training always said to me, move, you're spending too long in the one spot. In fact, in fairness to Steve, he's often told me the same thing. My problem was that I didn't believe in myself. I believed that the reason I wasn't catching fish was because I wasn't good enough. I used the same techniques in the States and caught heaps. So there's another takeaway for you. If you're not catching fish, over here in Australia and you're fishing for trout, there's a good chance that it's the wrong spot, and just move. I just wanted to recognise the fabulous women that I travelled to the States with, the most courageous bunch of girls. Jane's here with me, and 3 others, most courageous, professional, heroic bunch of girls that I've had the pleasure to spend good times and tough times with. This is with some of the New Zealand teams. This is us off to the opening ceremony, which was good times. The next day, things went very pear-shaped for the team. But I'm not going to dwell on any of that. I would make the same decisions again, happily and robustly. We did the right thing. And in not competing in the World Championships, it gave us a wonderful opportunity to fish wherever we damn well pleased instead of where we were told. And so this is me getting a selfie with the bridges of Madison County, and a lovely fish. I caught my first 2 casts on the Madison River were 2 fish, were rainbow up on that side at the beginning of my drift, and this fabulous brown which ran me around the pylons for a bit. I was pretty chuffed with that. And then coming to the end, the question is now, with comp fishing in my rearview mirror for a while, I'm taking a hiatus after the extreme disappointments of the circumstances. What is next for me? This is my best barra on fly to date. Sometime before the hellyfish one. It's about 64 centimetres, I think, from memory, Steve. What is next for me? Well, Steve knows that I get pretty disappointed in things like this, so he's done the normal thing of spin me around 3 times and point me towards the water, and the next thing that I'm going to do is beat that. In fact, before too long, my quest is I'm going to go and actually meet a fabulous guy tomorrow to start building a rod purpose-built to chase the ladies' world record barra on fly. So that is my new quest going forward. Because I'm a very driven person. So that's where I'm up to with my fly journey, from gobble guts to glory. So it's your cast. Tell me a little bit about you guys. Does anyone have questions? Over to you. No? Dumbfounded. Yes.
Jo,
So,
can you tell us about fly selection?
in what area?
Let's go making the boat.
Yes. And so are you fishing from the bank? Are you fishing from the boat?
Boat.
And well, it's going to come down to where the fish are. So if it was, and the time of year, you can bean's great if, I think it's in autumn time, at night time with the mud eyes. So you could do your mud eye selection if you're happy to, if you're camping and going to be there at night time. But generally in the lakes, on the boats with the comp fishing, we fish lock style, which means we're drifting down on, usually towards a bank. And depending on the circumstances, the wind and the depth of the fish that you've found, you're going to choose what your rig is. So whether you're going with a plonk or a bung or a floating, an indicator and nymphs under it. It's more, I would say it's more about how you're going to fish them than which ones you're choosing. But depending on the style, I mean, you've got your sparklers that can attract, and any of your streamers that are the streamer style that are going to be for stripping. But then more often than not, we're using the nymphs and just keeping them in the fish's face for as long as possible. So that's going to come down to the depth, what line you're using, and how fast the boat's going. So it's the thing that I've learnt in the comps is that it's so much more than fly selection. Yeah. Anyone else? There was a question over here. Yes, sir.
With the challenges from the
US.
worlds,
Yep.
yeah, the worlds, do you think that there'll be, on the whole, positives coming out of it for the Australian women's team going forward? Do you think this will be sort of a spark that drives some?
Look, I really think it's too early to cast my mind forward. I'm not that kind of witch. For me, my personal position is disappointment. It was disappointing not to be able to fish, but it was disappointing from a support level here, and so I'm chasing other dreams at the moment. But we have members of the team who are staying engaged and have an express request from me to let me know if they notice changes, and I'll be coming back. It's really hard. There aren't enough women fishing in the comps. So with so many women experiencing that level of disappointment, it's going to slow growth for a while. I think it will take us a while to get over it. But never say never. I think I'm incredibly proud of the way it was handled by our team. Glenn and Jane are a big part of that. And I think we were extremely professional, more professional than perhaps many of the other people involved. And I would say that because of the the wheels that are in motion now, all the things that have transpired, there will be change. I just don't know how quickly that will happen. But I think it's going to become quite apparent that change is required. Yeah. Yes?
This is semi-related, and it's broader than fly fishing. Why aren't there more women in recreational fishing, and what can we do to
Thank you.
encourage them?
That is such a welcome question. I have very strong theories on this. I'm the founder and president of the Women's Rec Fishing League, which is a national organisation designed to achieve parity, gender equity in fishing, recognising that there is no gender bias inherent in fishing whatsoever. It's one of the few sports in the world that can celebrate that. I believe that what we're dealing with now is a hangover from the days when there was really overt societal bias. I wasn't raised fishing, but my brothers were, just like I was raised to iron and they were raised to mow the lawn. So I discovered fishing in my 30s, and it was the most empowering and in actual fact, I believe, saved my life. And so I spend my time making sure other women who may have been raised the same way as I was get the opportunity to discover how empowering recreational fishing can be. In saying that, the challenge that we have is changing the mindset of the women who don't fish. The issue, I don't believe, from all the men that I speak to, the issue doesn't come from the men. The men would love to have their best mates fishing beside them, and everyone who does have that relationship is blessed, and they know it. So many people say to Steve all the time, you know, I wish my wife would fish with me. The issue is sometimes in an established relationship, partners aren't the best person to teach, especially if the male is already an avid. It's so true though, because they forget, they go into it with the right intention, but forget that until the woman is self-reliant, they're going to be a guide. And the mistake they make then is just, I want to get back fishing, so just give it to me and let me do it. She hasn't learnt anything out of that, and so she's never going to progress, right? So we have that issue, but we also then have the issue that they don't want to dip their toe in the water for fear of vilification. So that's what we talk to. We are up against the belief that the WRFL is a sexist organisation. We are not. We work on the mindset of the women. We've just got to make them feel comfortable enough to come to us. And then within 2 years, we spit them out as tournament anglers in open tournaments. It's about building the confidence to have the courage to say, if I'm right, I'm going to prove them wrong. And then they find out they weren't right in the first place. So it's a mindset issue on their part. So yeah, that's what we're doing, and that's what everyone needs to do, is just recognise they're scared. They think that they're going to be ridiculed and put down, and so we need to make them feel safe in coming. So thank you for asking that question. It's a really important one. It's so exciting for me to have a fellow ask it.
I don't necessarily want my wife fishing with me, but
She can come fishing with us. And you'll be surprised how much fun you'd have if she did. Hello. Ooh, fly lands first, not the line. Start shorter with your casts so that your line, you don't line the fish, because quite often what I've learnt with the Euro nymphing is that the fish can be right under your feet. So go shorter casts and fan out and further and further and further. So line the fish less and try and just pause up higher and let your fly drop first so that the line doesn't flop onto the water. And the other one that I have a really bad habit of doing myself is when I go to pick up my line, I don't go gentle enough, and it creates that off the water and makes a noise as well. So they're usually the most important ones, other than being as quiet as you possibly can.
Have you got a favourite species to target, fly or conventional?
Fly, trout.
Trout, yeah.
My reason for that is I can go anywhere in the world and target them, so it doesn't limit me. But I do love chasing absolutely every species because they're just so challenging knowing all the different ones. Conventional, it's probably change. I mean, if I can fish, I'm happy. If I'm in the Territory, Barron, Saratoga, absolutely love it. If I'm down here, well, I love the bass and I love the brim. And basically, if I'm lure fishing, I'm a happy girl. So bait fishing is harvesting, and we'll do that for food, but it's not the thing that I love doing. But just the challenge of trying to outsmart an animal with a brain the size of a pea, you know, that does it for me. So. His brain's a bit bigger, but I still enjoy the challenge of trying to outsmart him. He's very clever.
What about your favourite place to go fishing? Maybe in Australia and in the world.
Okay, all right. Well, you might be surprised to know that the US has become my favourite place to go fishing in Australia, despite politics. There are just so many fish over there. And it's so gobsmackingly beautiful. I mean, Australia is beautiful too, but it really just was distracting. But I've got many dream places that I could rave on forever. And then in Australia, my favourite place to go fishing, Tassie. I love saltwater fishing, particularly in Tassie. Absolutely adore going out chasing my squid. There's one time I love the bait fishing, going chase the squid and then go for the King George whiting with the squid that you've caught, and then taking all that back, snapping off some mussels and oysters and bits and pieces from around the place and making the best marinara in the world. That is just, yeah. All right, I think I've gone well over time, so I'm going to hand you over to the fabulous Steve, and I'm going to find some goodies to give those of you who ask me questions. Thank you so much.